Have you ever noticed how calm someone gets when they're secretly planning your downfall? What if I told you that silence isn't always peace, but preparation? And when they realize they can't control you anymore, they don't walk away. They change their mask. Welcome to Stoic Bridge, the bridge between ancient wisdom and modern life, guiding you through life's storms with calm and resilience. The moment you reclaim your freedom from manipulation, something unsettling happens. The manipulator doesn't retreat, they evolve. They shift tactics quietly, strategically, like a spider weaving a trap in the shadows or a hunter waiting motionless in the brush. You think you've found peace, but they're already adapting, patiently watching, preparing their next move. Outwardly, they smile, they speak softly, but underneath that calm surface is calculation, because when they lose control over you, they attempt to control something else, the story about you. They'll twist the truth, paint themselves as victims, or spin a web of lies so subtle that even your closest allies begin to doubt. Why? Because your strength threatens their illusion. Your independence reveals everything they tried to hide, and your refusal to bend is the very thing that pushes them to go darker, sneakier, and more desperate. So how can you spot the moment when someone stops trying to manipulate you directly and instead begins attacking your image, your truth, your peace, and more importantly, how can you rise above their tricks without getting dragged back into their web? Let's uncover the answer together. Number 1. They try to shame you publicly. Sometimes the most cutting blows aren't shouted, they're whispered in front of an audience. A manipulator knows this well, and when they realize they can no longer sway you behind closed doors, they move the battle into the open. This is where one of their most calculated weapons comes into play: public shaming. When silent treatments, guilt trips, and emotional games no longer bend your will, they escalate. They take their tactics from the shadows into the spotlight because humiliation in public is their last shot at regaining control. They count on one thing: that your fear of being judged, ridiculed, or misunderstood will weaken your resolve. They'll mock your ideas during meetings, throw out sarcastic remarks dressed as jokes, subtly question your intelligence, your loyalty, or your competence, loud enough for others to hear, but soft enough to deny intent. And when you confront them, they flash a smile and say, "Relax, I was just kidding," or "You're reading too much into it." But deep down, you know better, because you feel the sting, you notice the shift, and instinctively, you understand what's happening. They failed to make you doubt yourself privately, so now they're trying to make others doubt you publicly. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes your compass. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know the truth. And Carl Jung once said, shame is a soul-eating emotion. Together, they show us that public perception only holds power if you grant it authority over your peace. Shame can only hurt you when you believe it, but truth, real truth, doesn't crumble under pressure. Not under gossip, not under laughter, not under the weight of judgmental stares. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Claire, had a manager who mastered the art of subtle sabotage. He couldn't shake her confidence in private. She was too composed, too grounded, so he shifted to small jabs in front of others, cutting her off mid-sentence in meetings, rolling his eyes when she spoke. Once he joked aloud, "We should give Claire a trophy for working late twice this month." Everyone laughed. But Claire didn't. She didn't flinch. She let the silence hang like a curtain, and then calmly said, "Working late isn't a badge, it's a system failure." The room went still. She didn't stoop to his level, she didn't strike back. She stood tall, firm, steady, silent. And that silence, it was thunderous. That was the day the room stopped laughing with him and started seeing through him. So how do you deal with someone who tries to shame you in public? First, don't let it shake your worth. You are not defined by applause or disapproval. Second, resist the temptation to retaliate. Speak with calm, clear truth. And third, trust in time. Truth doesn't always shout, but it always stands. You don't need to fight fire with fire. Let your quiet strength become the echo that lingers after their noise fades. Because once shame no longer sticks, their power begins to slip. Now let's take a deeper look at what they try next when public shaming fails to break you. Number 2, they play the victim. It's a strange thing how the roles can flip so fast. One day, you're the one being mistreated. The next, you're being cast as the villain in someone else's carefully rewritten story. This is one of the most deceptive moves in the manipulator's playbook. When their control starts slipping, when your boundaries hold, when their guilt trips no longer land, they don't push harder. They play weaker. They become the victim. Suddenly, they're the one who's hurt. You're the cold one now, the ungrateful one, the one who's changed. But don't be fooled. This isn't confusion. This is a calculated shift in narrative. They twist your strength into cruelty, your boundaries into betrayal, your growth into a personal attack. And it's not just to win sympathy, it's to discredit you, to isolate you, to distort how others see you, because they've lost the power to distort how you see yourself. Here's the hard truth. If they can't manipulate you, they'll manipulate the story about you. They'll act wounded, exaggerate, cry without tears, and drop just enough suggestive sorrow to make others raise their eyebrows at you. But remember what Stoic wisdom teaches us. Epictetus once said, he has a long way to go on his journey, and someone wisely observed, when a person can no longer manipulate you, they'll try to manipulate how others see you. And they were absolutely right. The Stoic path doesn't ask you to fight for your image. It asks you to master your response. Because truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to stand. Still, quiet, undeniable. Let me tell you a story. A woman I know, let's call her Lauren, was in a long-term relationship where she gave everything. Time, energy, care, compassion. But one day she realized the giving was one-sided. So she did something brave. She started saying no. She started setting limits. She chose peace over pressure. Her partner didn't yell, didn't argue. He chose a more manipulative path. He went to their mutual friends. I don't know what's wrong with Lauren, he'd say. She's become so distant, so selfish. He played the victim so perfectly that people began to question her. But Lauren didn't run around defending herself. She didn't try to explain her every move. She focused on healing, on rebuilding, on becoming whole again. And eventually, the people who mattered saw through the illusion. No performance could outlast her consistency. So how do you respond when someone weaponizes victimhood against you? First, stay calm. Don't get pulled into the drama they're trying to create. Second, stand firm in your truth. You don't owe explanations to every echo chamber. Let your life, your quiet strength, speak for itself. And third, don't shrink just because your light makes someone else uncomfortable. Their version of the story may be louder, but yours is rooted in truth. And truth, unlike lies, doesn't need embellishment to endure. At the end of the day, if someone has to pretend to be a victim just to make you look like the enemy, you've already taken your power back. Keep it. Walk forward. Let their fiction collapse under the quiet weight of your reality. Now let's look at another manipulative tactic. One that spreads like wildfire but begins with just a whisper. Number 3, they start spreading subtle lies. Not all attacks are loud. Sometimes the most destructive tactics begin with a whisper. Soft, uncertain, and calculated. This is where the manipulator sinks to one of their lowest levels. When they can no longer control your thoughts, they try to influence how others think about you. And they do it with subtle lies. Not wild accusations, but carefully constructed doubts. They won't say you're a bad person. That would be too obvious. Instead, they'll murmur, I don't know, something just feels off about them lately. They won't point fingers. They'll raise eyebrows. They won't accuse you directly. They'll imply, suggest, hint, just enough to plant seeds of doubt in someone else's mind. And once those seeds are planted, they wait, quietly, knowing that others will start watering them without even realizing it. Here's the truth. This isn't about setting the record straight. It's about eroding your foundation, slowly, silently, strategically. They'll distort facts, twist your words, and play innocent. They'll make you look dishonest without ever calling you a liar. And all the while, they remain in the background, smiling, pretending nothing's wrong, while they quietly chip away at your reputation. Because when they can't control how you see yourself, they'll try to control how others see you. It's no longer simple manipulation, it's sabotage. Their goal? Isolation. They want people to question your motives, to doubt your character, to hesitate before trusting you. And the worst part? They know they don't need proof. Just a few strategically placed comments, a few raised suspicions, a little silence at the wrong moment. That's enough to start the damage. This is where Stoic clarity becomes your compass. Seneca once said, "The truth is simple. Lies require complication." And Mark Twain put it bluntly, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes." That's exactly what this tactic exploits. The speed of gossip versus the pace of truth. But a Stoic doesn't chase rumors. A Stoic doesn't scramble to explain. They don't rush to clear every room filled with misunderstanding, because they know truth, while slow, stands taller, and it always outlasts the noise. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Eric, once worked for a company where integrity was in short supply. One day, a coworker asked him to cut a few corners on a project. Eric politely declined. That should have been the end of it. But over the following weeks, he noticed something strange. People started treating him differently. Whispers followed him down the hallway. Comments like, "Eric's been acting really territorial," or "he's not easy to work with," began surfacing. Never to his face, only in rooms where he wasn't present. But Eric didn't panic. He didn't lash out or demand apologies. He stayed focused. He upheld his values. He let his consistency, not his defense, do the talking. And in time, the lies lost their grip, because the people who mattered could see the truth without him having to say a word. So, how do you respond when someone distorts reality around you? First, don't chase every rumor. That's exactly what they want. Second, let your actions speak. The truth doesn't need a defense team. It just needs to be lived. And third, trust that time will do what manipulation can't. Expose what was hidden, reveal what was twisted, and return clarity to confusion. At the end of the day, someone who has to lie about you just to feel powerful already knows the truth is not on their side. Let them weave their webs. You, keep walking in truth, simply, honestly, unapologetically, because truth doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to last. Now let's move on to another silent weapon in the manipulator's arsenal. One that works not by twisting words, but by twisting relationships. Number 4, they isolate you from others. Sometimes the most dangerous walls aren't made of bricks. They're made of silence, shifts in tone, lingering glances, invisible lines slowly drawn between you and the people who once stood by your side. This is one of the most calculated moves a manipulator makes when they sense their influence over you is slipping. They don't scream. They don't drag you away. Instead, they isolate you softly, surgically, socially and psychologically. It starts with whispers, a raised eyebrow, a comment like, "Have you noticed they've been acting different lately?" Or, "They're not as easy to talk to anymore." These aren't direct attacks. They're small shifts in energy, subtle, intentional, just enough to make others feel uncertain around you. And before long, you notice people pulling back, not because of anything you've done, but because of something carefully suggested. Here's the truth. They're not trying to remove you physically. They're trying to corner you emotionally, because isolation is their shortcut to control. The fewer people you feel connected to, the more vulnerable you become. The easier it is for them to chip away at your confidence, to plant seeds of doubt, to make you second-guess your own strength. They want you to feel alone, unsure, unsteady. And they do it not out of fairness, but out of fear, because they know the best way to take someone's power is to convince them they have no one left in their corner. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your armor. Seneca once advised, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." And Machiavelli, in a moment of chilling honesty, revealed the darker side of strategy. Control the narrative, and you control the person. That's what they're doing. Not just manipulating how others see you, but trying to rewrite how you see yourself. Let me tell you a story. A woman I know, we'll call her Jenna, was part of a close-knit project team. Smart, articulate, grounded in her values. But when she started asserting herself, setting boundaries, speaking up against unreasonable demands, one of her teammates didn't take it well. He felt threatened, so he began planting quiet doubts. Nothing obvious, just light comments dropped at the right time. Jenna's been really intense lately, don't you think? Something's off. She's harder to work with now. Those words were soft, but they carried weight. Soon, meetings felt colder, conversations shorter, and Jenna felt it all without knowing exactly where it came from. But instead of panicking, she chose stillness. She didn't confront, she didn't accuse, she simply stayed consistent, showed up with integrity, kept adding value, kept being herself. And eventually those who mattered saw through the fog. The manipulator's whispers couldn't compete with her actions. The illusion cracked under the pressure of truth. So, how do you protect yourself from this kind of isolation? First, be aware. Recognize the tactic before it takes root. Second, double down on your integrity. Consistency is your best defense. And third, surround yourself with those who reflect your values. You don't need a crowd, just a few real ones who know your heart and trust your truth. At the end of the day, isolation is a trap, a carefully built illusion. But people who are truly meant for you won't fall for cheap narratives. They'll see through the noise. They'll stand with you in the silence. Stay grounded, stay true, and let your quiet strength outlast the whispers. Now let's uncover another emotional weapon in the manipulator's arsenal, one that targets your kindness and turns it into a burden. Number 5, they use guilt to make you comply. Guilt. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It wears the face of care, but behind the mask, it's control. Among all the emotional tools manipulators use, this one might be the most draining. Not because it's loud, but because it's intimate. It doesn't attack your logic. It bypasses your thoughts entirely and aims straight for your heart, your empathy, your conscience, your compassion. They won't argue with facts. They won't have an honest discussion. Instead, they'll say something like, "After everything I've done for you," or "Wow, I guess none of that really mattered to you, huh?" It sounds emotional, it sounds personal, but it's not love. It's not fairness, it's not concern. It's emotional blackmail. A manipulator uses guilt as a weapon, not to heal, but to weaken, not to understand, but to bend your will. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. They guilt you because it works. They don't need to yell or cause a scene, a sigh, a disappointed tone, a loaded sentence wrapped in sorrow. That's all it takes to make you shrink. They know you care, they know you want to do the right thing, and instead of honoring that, they twist it. So you end up saying yes when your soul screams no. You apologize for things you didn't do. You carry burdens that don't belong to you, just to avoid making them feel bad, just to escape that heavy feeling they placed on your shoulders. But here's what Stoic wisdom teaches us. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And someone else put it even more sharply. Guilt is a weapon used by those too weak to lead, yet too afraid to be left behind. Real love doesn't use shame as a leash. It doesn't make you question your right to have boundaries, to rest, to say no. If they truly valued you, they wouldn't weaponize your compassion. They would protect it. They would honor it. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Danielle, had a relative who constantly made her feel guilty for choosing herself. When Danielle took a job out of state, a huge career opportunity, her aunt didn't say, "Congratulations." She said, "Wow, I guess family doesn't mean much to you anymore." When Danielle couldn't attend every gathering or say yes to every request, her aunt would quietly stab her with guilt. "After everything I've done for you." And it worked. For a while. Danielle kept saying yes, kept stretching herself thin, kept betraying her own needs just to maintain peace, until one day, she asked herself a simple question: would I ever speak to someone I love the way she speaks to me? That moment changed everything. She didn't explode. She didn't fight. She just stopped acting out of guilt and started living from self-respect. The shift was quiet, but it was powerful. So how do you deal with someone who tries to control you through guilt? First, recognize the script. It's not kindness, it's manipulation dressed as care. Second, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to or because I'm afraid not to? And third, set boundaries. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they once did you a favor. You don't have to carry guilt just because someone handed it to you. At the end of the day, guilt only has power when you believe you've done something wrong. But setting healthy boundaries, that's not wrong. That's wisdom in action. And those who truly love you will never make you feel bad for taking care of your own soul. Coming up next, let's explore the most insidious tactic of all, when they attack your very sense of self, trying to destroy your confidence from the inside out. Number 6, they try to destroy your confidence. Imagine a slow drip of water falling on the same spot every day. It seems harmless at first, but over time it wears down even the strongest stone. That's how this tactic works. It doesn't hit all at once. It chips away quietly, patiently, deliberately. When a manipulator realizes they can no longer control your actions, they turn to something darker. They begin attacking who you are. Not openly, but through subtle, consistent undermining of your confidence. They don't just want to win an argument, they want you to lose trust in yourself. This isn't about one moment, it's about breaking your foundation over time. It starts with small jabs, backhanded compliments, snide remarks, questions that sound like concern but are actually designed to plant doubt. Are you sure that was the right call? Wow, you're really confident about that, huh? Or even, well, that's one way to do it. One comment might not sting, but 100 of them, they change how you see yourself. Here's the truth. When they realize they can't own you, they try to erase you from the inside out. They want you to second guess every decision, to hesitate before speaking, to start craving their approval again, not because they've earned your trust, but because they've broken your belief in your own voice. And once that happens, they don't have to control you directly. You'll silence yourself. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your defense. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." And Naval Ravikant echoed this truth. The first step in silencing a strong mind is to convince it that it's broken. But let me be clear, you are not broken. You are under psychological attack by someone who fears your strength because it reminds them of everything they lack. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Chris, was in a long-term relationship. Every time he succeeded, got a promotion, made a bold move, or took initiative, his partner had a way of brushing it off. If he got a raise, she'd say, "Well, that's what happens when you have the right connections." If he made a confident decision, she'd ask, "Are you sure that's smart?" It felt small, petty, even playful at first. But over time, it built up. Chris began to shrink. He went from assertive and vibrant to quiet, unsure, hesitant. Until one day, a close friend looked at him and said, "You've changed, and not in a good way." That moment was a mirror. Chris realized he was no longer living as himself, but as someone shaped by constant doubt. That day, he chose himself. He walked away. Rebuilding took time, but day by day, the fog lifted. His confidence didn't return because someone gave it back. It came back because he remembered who he was before the noise. So, how do you protect yourself from this kind of manipulation? First, recognize it's intentional. These comments aren't accidents. They are designed to erode. Second, protect your mental space. Write down your wins. Name your values. Celebrate your strengths. Keep them close. Remind yourself often. And third, surround yourself with people who speak truth into you, not fear. People who lift you, not break you. Because in the end, confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from knowing who you are, especially when someone is trying to make you forget. Don't hand them that power. Reclaim your voice, rebuild your strength, and never forget, no one can destroy what you refuse to surrender. Now, let's move into the final and most deceptive tactic. When manipulation fails, they return with softness and promises, offering a reconciliation that isn't real. Number 7, they offer fake reconciliation. Sometimes the final move isn't a fight, it's a smile. When all other tactics fail, when control slips through their fingers, the manipulator doesn't always rage. Sometimes they reach out with softness. They offer what appears to be peace, an apology, a gentle tone, a nostalgic memory laced with regret. They say things like, "I've been thinking a lot lately," or "I miss what we had, I just want to make things right." And on the surface, it feels sincere. It sounds like growth. It looks like change. But what you're seeing isn't healing, it's a reset. This is one of the most deceptive moves in the manipulator's playbook. Fake reconciliation. They've seen that you've grown, that you've drawn your boundaries, that you've stood tall and reclaimed your peace. So now, they flip the script. They return not as the aggressor, but as the remorseful, humble version of themselves. They mirror your progress. They mimic your new language. They say all the right things, but underneath that new tone lies the same old agenda: control. They don't want to make amends. They want back in, not to start fresh, but to pick up where they left off, this time more careful, more patient, more strategic. And once your guard is down, the old behaviors resurface, first slowly, then all at once. This is where Stoic clarity becomes essential. Epictetus once wrote, "He who does not observe deceit is not truly wise." And another powerful reminder says, "Be careful who you let back in. The snake only sheds its skin to grow larger." Wisdom is not just about forgiving. It's about recognizing patterns, because a changed tone doesn't always mean a changed heart. Let me share a story. A woman I know, we'll call her Naomi, had finally broken free from a manipulative ex. He had drained her emotionally for years. And after one final betrayal, she cut all contact. She spent months healing, working on herself, rediscovering who she was. Then one day he came back, apologetic, soft-spoken. He told her he'd been in therapy, that he had seen the damage he caused, that he missed the connection they once had. Naomi was cautious, but curious. She let him in slowly, and for a while things felt different, but soon the small criticisms returned, the passive guilt trips, the silent control. Same story, new disguise. That's when Naomi realized he hadn't changed, he had simply adapted. So, how do you respond to someone who offers fake reconciliation? First, take your time. Real change isn't dramatic, it's consistent, measured, proven. Second, look at actions, not words. Are they respecting your boundaries or just trying to soften them? And third, ask yourself honestly, do I want this person in my life? Or am I just drawn to the version they're pretending to be? Because not every apology deserves a key to your door. Not every smile deserves your trust. Forgive if you choose, but don't forget the pattern. Because when someone shows you who they are over and over again, the wise path isn't to keep hoping they'll change. It's to believe them. Before we close, let's take a quiet breath together. Today we explored 7 of the most deceptive tactics manipulators use when they realize they can no longer control you. We saw how they try to shame you publicly, how they shift the blame and play the victim, and how they quietly spread subtle lies to turn others against you. We learned how they isolate you from your support, how they use guilt to bend your will, and how they chip away at your confidence to make you doubt yourself. And finally, we uncovered their most cunning move of all, fake reconciliation, when they come back wearing a new mask, but with the same old intentions. Each of these tactics is rooted in fear, fear of your strength, your clarity, your refusal to be controlled. But you don't have to match their cruelty with anger. You don't have to fight noise with more noise. The Stoic path shows us another way, a quieter, deeper strength, one that stands tall without shouting, one that defends peace without losing it. So if this message spoke to something deep in you, if it helped you understand a past wound or offered clarity for your present, take a moment to reflect. And if you feel it could help someone else find their center again, go ahead and give this video a like. It truly helps more people discover it. If you'd like more content like this, grounded in timeless wisdom and personal strength, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and become part of this journey with us. And finally, I'd love to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced any of these tactics? What helped you stay strong? I'll be there, reading and replying, because your voice matters. Until next time, stay grounded, stay true, and never trade your peace for someone else's approval.